So this is Nigel, my boxer, and we're going to show you some of the steps in teaching a trick. So basically the recipe for shaping a trick and adding a cue, and this particular trick is very cute. We did it in an afternoon, and here's how it goes. Nigel, are you a snob? You are? Are you a snob? You are. You are not. Are you a snob? What a good boy. So I decided to start shaping Nigel to lift his head. And what I first did was started to click and treat him just for tiny lifts up of his chin. And thought I'd kind of see where it went from there. So after working on the head lift, I started to only click treat him for higher lifts so that he'd lift his head a little bit, further towards the ceiling. I stopped clicking him for just the tiny lifts, and then what happens is he starts to lift his head higher and higher. He just starts to experiment to see what gets me to click and treat. So now that Nigel started to lift his head higher, I also started shaping for longer and longer duration, where I would want him to hold his head up there and kind of freeze for more than just a millisecond. So I started shaping for higher as well as longer duration. So I wanted Nigel to understand that when I said snob or are you a snob, that's when he was to lift his head. So what I would do is, as he was practicing lifting his head for the clicks and treats, I would say, or try to say, are you a snob, before he lifted his head. So he would attach that sound that I was making to the behavior of lifting his head. And then just repeat, repeat, repeat. You know you're a good boy, right? Are you a snob? Are you a snob? Are you a snob? Are you a snob? This is when the dog is so sure that a specific behavior earns him a reward that he keeps wanting to do it again and again. We find that very funny, but on the other hand, we don't really want to keep rewarding it because then it wouldn't make for a good trick where we could actually say a cue and the dog would only do the behavior on cue when we give the signal. So then what I start to do is I no longer click treat him if he lifts his head. What you can't see in the video is I actually will turn my head away, and then what he learns is that, okay, if I lift my head, no click treat. But if I wait until she says, are you a snob, and then lift my head, then there's a click treat. So this is where we're at. We're at the process of trying to get him to only offer the behavior when I give the cue. Are you a snob? Are you a snob? Are you a snob? Nigel, are you a snob? You are? Are you a snob? You are. You are not. Are you a snob? What a good boy.